I want to say a big thank you to our Sustainable House Day major sponsor, the City of Greater Geelong, and our presenting partner, Winky Energy, who's also our partner for our electric homes program. I'd also like to thank the Geelong Library for hosting us this afternoon. Sustainable House Day is now in its 17th year. That's 17 years of homes being open to share and inspire you all and our community to live more sustainably. It's our biggest event with almost 1,000 people walking through open homes each year and attending the events that are wrapped around it. We had an electrification event with Saul Griffith last week that some of you may also have attended. These events play a really important role in empowering community and inspiring action. It's a key part of who we are at Geelong Sustainability. Who is Geelong Sustainability? We're a community-created, not-for-profit, established back in 2007, almost 18 years old, by a very passionate group of committed volunteers. We exist to build a powerful community movement for a just transition to a net zero future. I realised I forgot to start clicking the thing. I got distracted by words. We're now a team of 7 and 9 board members supporting households, community organisations, local businesses, schools, local and state governments across the Bowen South West region to take climate action. We deliver events, projects, programs, campaigns and services to educate, engage and support our region's transition to a thriving, climate-safe future. So first up, I'd like to invite Pete Mercurio, the Senior Sustainability Officer from the City of Greater Geelong, to say a few words.
Thanks, Jenny. Thanks, Jane. Really appreciate all the introductions and really want a warm welcome to everyone here and thank you very much for coming along. Geelong Sustainability, without them, my job would be tremendously difficult. We have a great partnership that's forged over many years now. And I'm looking forward to the next development and stage that we're going to come to in the next couple of years with some exciting plans. I won't take up too much of your time because I'm just a president of the council, but I will say this. There is a slogan called Get Off Gas. And today's not about electrification, it's more about cooking and food and biodiversity and gardens. So I like the phrase Get Off Grass. That's for me is one of the fundamentals that we can become a bit more resilient to climate and climate risk and climate impacts. The nature strip guidelines does allow you to plant food in your nature strips now, which is fantastic. Have a read. The Rotary of Highton have done a tremendous job in planning out 20 nature strips across Belmont and Highton areas, and they're looking to get participants for another 100 for next year. And that'll come out in the Urban Forest Strategy as well, early 2026. 2026, Jesus. But without further ado, I'll pass you back to Jane, and I appreciate it. Thank you very much for coming, everybody.
Thanks, Pete. And I'd now like to introduce David Lee from Winky Energy, our presenting partner for Sustainable House Day.
Thanks, Jane. I also won't take up too much of your time, but I am David from Winky Energy. Both myself and Winky Energy and the entire Winky Energy team, we are delighted to have had the opportunity to work with Geelong Sustainability and help them deliver this year's Sustainable House Day. I have a tendency to talk for too long, so I am going to try and keep this brief. But it's been an absolute pleasure and privilege for Winky to have worked so closely with Geelong Sustainability over the last year and a half. Is that how long? Yeah, a year and a half-ish. And help them realise projects and work on them with a large breadth of projects, not just the Sustainable House Days, but also the Electric Homes Program and the Climate Safe Homes Initiative, which have all been great. I'm going to wrap this up so that we can get on to listening to the far more interesting things that both Mandy Hall and James McLennan have to say. I do, however, want to just quickly say that ultimately what we're all doing here is the same thing. We're trying to work sustainably within sustainable environments, and we're trying to realise ways to better utilise the natural resources of the world within our home, whether that be the clean green energy of the sun or the soil of our land, to make our world more ecologically and environmentally sustainable. So here's to learning more about that in this presentation. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you, David. And now I'd like to introduce Mandy Hall. Mandy Hall is a MasterChef Australia alumni and the SA South Australia Woman of the Year for Hospitality. With a career spanning food, media, business and events, Mandy brings a unique blend of expertise, creativity and impact. Deeply committed to fairer food systems, good food for all, and sustainable living, Mandy inspires change while celebrating the joy of cooking and the stories behind every plate. We're so happy she has come here to be with us today. Welcome, Mandy.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. I hope you can all hear me. What a turnout. It's amazing. I said this morning when I got here, I have not been to Geelong for 35 years. My brother lived here. It's blown me away. It is such a beautiful place and there is so much to do and see. So I'll definitely be heading back. I need a week here at least, but it's what you're doing in this city and the conversations that I'm having with people and what I'm hearing about, and testament to you all here today, is so many steps in the right direction. So I guess why am I here, and how did I get here is a little bit of an interesting story. But before I start, I had this grand plan that I was going to cook all these things in front of you today, while I was telling you about a range of things to do with food waste in households, until I realised that you only have to endure me for about 30 minutes. And I was like, well, all of that cooking is not going to happen while I'm talking. So a lot is here, and a lot of what I've done will be pre-prepared, so forgive me. I had a significant career in media. That's how it all kind of began for me. And many, many, many years ago, when I was in my 30s, I became really unwell. Media is unforgiving. I lost my job, and at the same time, my eldest child was diagnosed as being on the spectrum. Western medicine is a marvellous thing, but all it could offer both of us at that time were a load of drugs, and which helped keep me alive, certainly. I wasn't so convinced that my 6-year-old should be on that journey. So I really started looking into food and food's power to heal, and what it meant to eat well and not be inflamed, and what did it mean even all those years ago? What were we eating? What were we consuming? I've noticed there's some kids, so I'm not going to swear, but I became the biggest pain in the you-know-what to be around, because I wanted to know where everything came from, everything that was in front of me. What were those chickens fed? Did the grass, did they eat grass on the hill facing the sun at 12 o'clock? What happened? But it made a significant difference in my life, and certainly led me to really heavily invest in what I knew about food. Years passed, I got really well. My son is now a 32-year-old man who's just married and doing extraordinary things in life. I applied for a residency in Tennessee on fermentation. It's a residency that was probably only for chefs, and I decided that I would apply. I was with a man by the name of Sandor Katz. If you know anything about fermentation, you'll know that he is the guru of such. And so I was lucky enough to get into that program. I went onto his property, off the grid, camped, part of his community, and did a fermentation residency. I came back, and MasterChef came knocking on my door. I have absolutely zero idea why I thought that was a good idea, because you cannot ferment or preserve or do anything in 45 or 60 minutes. And what I stand for doesn't necessarily translate all the time on commercial television. We're getting there, but I was never going to win MasterChef. However, I decided to use it for everything that I could afterwards, and to use it for a platform in the things that I desperately believe in, and that is real food, where does food come from, and preservation, and fermentation, and eating seasonally, and reducing our waste. And that was long, really, before I understood the magnitude of the problem of waste in this country. I've got some slides, I think. Oh gosh, you've been having to look at me all that time. That's revolting. Sorry about that. When I stand and I talk to anybody about the magnitude of the issue of food waste in this country, the one thing it's like everything that everyone in this room believes in. I don't want you to walk away feeling despondent, because the fact that you're here means that we make change. We're talking about it more, people are understanding. The problem is significant. I term it here as 1 in 5 bags of groceries goes in the bin. That's old data. It's unfortunately more than that now. But the worst thing that we can do, it's like anything that requires behaviour change, the worst thing that we can do is point fingers and talk about shame and blame. And, I'm going to give you some data which will feel a bit heavy and might feel a bit finger pointy, but that is not where I want that to go. It's just that until we really understand the magnitude of the problem, it's kind of a bit harder to fix. And when you see, commercial television is doing a lot and trying to move forward, and we have shows about food waste, but when we see these huge piles of rotting food, unfortunately what that kind of does is normalise the problem. Or the other thing that happens is Australians look at it and go, it's too big for me to do anything about, so I'm not going to do anything at all. Or this is what it means to be in Australia. We're really lucky we have all this access to produce. We make enough and we grow enough food to feed the population 7 times over in Australia. And so, those big rotting piles, whilst they disgust us and for a moment they fill us with shame, they don't have the effect that we would hope that they do. I said 7 times, that was my excitement. It's 3. It's a lot of food though. It's a lot of food, and I know that information is a lot to take in, but the old data, which I sadly can say has increased, is that we throw away in Australia 7.6 million tonnes of food into landfill every year, year after year. Whilst the Food Bank Hunger Report that was released this year will tell you that 3.3 to 3.5 million of Australians could not put food on their table. I find that contrast almost impossible to deal with. It's such a wicked problem. But it becomes more wicked because food waste is completely solvable. Unlike some issues that we face, we can solve the issue. It is multifactorial, there is no doubt. There are a lot of things that contribute to food waste. What I'm talking to you about today will all be based on data that's either come from OzHarvest, Food Bank Australia, the organisation that I used to work for, End Food Waste Australia. The recipe that, I'm not sure how it's been given out, whether it's gone on a website or you're getting a card, that I've chosen. It's because these are the ingredients. So there were bin audits done for 3 years solid by End Food Waste Australia, by the CRC. And the ingredients that are in these recipes are the most common ingredients in Australian household bins. Even eggs, bread, wilted herbs, an onion, because there's just one rolling around, and so people will say, I don't really know what to do with that one, and I don't really know how to store it, I'm going to ditch it. Half full jars of condiments. It's really interesting that we find ourselves in a position where perhaps we've lost some of our skills for cooking, and so therefore when I look at all those ingredients, it's all right for me to say that I can see something in there. Some people, cannot. Governments talk about needing money, and how do we pay for this, and health systems and climate change, and what do we do? And when we think about just food waste alone is a $36 billion, $36.6 billion issue. That is a significant amount of money. And that translates to the volume is across the entire supply chain is 29 million meals every day in Australia. I don't know if I've just lost sound, have I? Have I lost sound? Hopefully I haven't. Can you hear me still? I might give you my pack. It might have just having a battery moment. Oh, or did we lose power? Power moment. Oh, look. Yeah. the problem with me is even without the power, I can still keep talking, so I will. If we think about 29 million meals across the supply chain every day, those are staggering numbers. And as I said, the big numbers that I'm giving you today in this discussion, really, I don't want... Oh, here we go, we're up. I don't want to... Oh, I even lost my screen. I don't want to scare people. I don't want people to think there's no hope, because that is far from the truth. Maybe it was me with all my appliances on stage that just tripped the power. And you can't fix what you don't truly understand. It goes without saying that one of the easiest ways for us to impact climate change in this country is to not waste food. The fact that you're sitting here means it's highly likely that none of you have a food waste issue. But it is the conversation that we need to have in Australia. It's the conversation you need to have with your neighbours and with your schools and where you go to work, because whilst you might get it and have this enormous appreciation for what it does to the climate when we waste food, unintentionally, there are a lot of people, who do not. So when people see these numbers, they can't believe it, because people believe that it is supermarkets that are the main problem with food waste in this country. When in fact, that's a 4-year study. The numbers come from FIAL. 32% of all households are the largest contributor to food waste in the country, followed by, I don't need to read out the stats, you can see them on screen. So a third of all food in the country that's been wasted has come from households. I think we know, behaviour will tell us, we know it's a multitude of reasons, but what that means is households alone are responsible for 7.7 million meals every day. And when we consider those numbers around food insecurity, it kind of makes us, wince a little. There is no doubt that nobody wakes up and says, hey, I know all that money that I spent on that food, I'm going to go and throw it in the bin. It's over 40 behaviours actually. The Great Unwaste, of which I led and built with End Food Waste Australia, concentrated on the top 7 behaviours, but there are a lot of behaviours that contribute to food waste. Uneaten leftovers being the single biggest wasted item. I find it kind of mind-blowing, because to me, leftovers are the greatest thing ever. Like, the taste is significant. So when you cook a meal and people talk about caramelisation and they talk about the flavour you get, so there is a reaction when you cook food and you get that caramel and flavour. When you put those leftovers in the fridge, that reaction continues. It's kind of minor. So when people say, leftovers taste better the next day, they do, because they actually do. They're creating more flavour in the fridge. I don't know, who here doesn't like the thought? Oh no, I'm not going to shame you. I'm going to go the other way around. Who eats leftovers? Yeah. Okay, I'm in the wrong room, right? I'm in the right room, actually. It bewilders me, and it happens even in my family. It took me with my kids to get them to understand, what a ridiculous waste of money it would be to go out to work and buy your lunch when you have, last night's dinner there to take. How much more flavoursome soup is the next day, a casserole, a curry 2 days later. I mean, it's mind-blowing. We then have the issues around food labelling. If that is not the most, again, I won't swear, it is not the most confusing thing ever. You could walk into, if you shop at supermarkets, walk into the dairy section and you will see best before, used by, packed on. But at the end of the day, for people who aren't familiar with food and are in a hurry and maybe they're not in the headspace that we all are, they just see a date and it'll go in the bin, or because people are terrified of being poisoned. They'd forgotten that years ago we didn't have a talking fridge and ChatGPT, and we didn't have this, and all we did was rely on, I'm sure people got sick, but let's not worry about those people, but we relied on our senses. We would open, as a kid, you'd open the milk and you'd smell it, you'd taste something. That we've lost all our confidence when it comes to that, and we rely on the dates that are provided to us. And yet, best before is in my words, is a marketing ploy. It's just, all that it is that you've got likely pressured by, a bigger organisation like a supermarket. You've got producers who are making food and it has to be at its premium, and they're pressured into putting a date. And when will it stop being at its absolute glorious best? And so they give a date. It has nothing to do with food safety. Use by dates are a different matter. Obviously, we're talking about food safety then, and I'm not, please don't come at me and sue me. I'm not telling you to do this, but if you've got a carton of milk that hasn't been opened by its used by date, I guarantee you it's still going to be good 3 days later. You open it up and you smell it and there'll be nothing wrong with it. I say this all the time and I just wait for the day that somebody sues me or, I don't know, comes at me, but there are very few things with the amount of preservatives that are in foods and the way and the food safety standards that we have in this country, which keep us very safe, so I'm not criticising them. You'd be hard-pressed to be in trouble with use by dates. But again, use your senses, it's there. I have listed here, and I don't want to go out, I don't want to go through them all, but a lot of them are already here about, what are the most wasted foods. Bread, milk, yogurt, cooked chicken. I think it's a fear thing with cooked chicken, that people just get a bit frightened. They're worried about getting sick, so they're not sure what to do. And that normally is a storage issue. Like, for example, it is simple things like, say you roast a chook, as I said, in this room, I'm sure you're pretty all aware what to do, and you're au fait with it, and you're pretty good about it all. But pull the meat off. If you don't know when you're going to eat that chook, or if you haven't got time to pull the meat up, grab the carcass with the meat attached and throw it in the freezer. It'll be absolutely fine. You'll get it out. You can use it for a dish, a casserole, a sandwich, what have you. Otherwise, pull the meat off, put it in a container, label it with a little date, pop it in your fridge, use it up. They're going in the bin. These are just everyday items, and we seem to have extremes. And again, everything that I'm talking to you about comes from data. It's not my opinion that we either have people who are so entrenched in, this is my meal plan and this is what I have to do, and it's kind of, I have to stick to it, and then they become overwhelmed, and then they've got all this food and so they throw it out, or people who can't plan at all. And I think the reality is, stick to a shopping list, plan for a change of plans, plan for just a couple of days in advance if you can. If you're that kind of person that gets overwhelmed by the whole meal planning situation, which can be a bit tedious and boring, just plan for a couple of days. Or plan with blank spots so that if someone invites you out for dinner, if the kids' sport runs over, if something happens, you have this opportunity to use up your leftovers, or I'm sure there'll be something in the freezer. I've talked a lot about leftovers. Oz Harvest did this amazing thing with something called Use It Up tape, which is such an impactful, visual reminder that you can put in the fridge and people know, and if you've a larger family, the kids can open the door and they go, oh yeah, we have to use that up. I love Oz Harvest and the work that they do, and so what I'm about to say has nothing to do with not getting your hands on Use It Up tape. I would contact them, they'll send it out to you, they're amazing. You also have sticky tape at home, masking tape, texters, create a shelf in your fridge that says, use this. If it's on this shelf, everybody use it up. Know what your fridge temperature should be, somewhere between 0 and 4 degrees. Again, such a common sense, simple thing. 2-for-1 specials, we see less of them now. That's the pressure, hopefully, from the public against supermarkets. What would happen was people would get so excited. I'll just use tomatoes for an example. You know, you might see this, 2 bags of tomatoes for the price of 1, and everybody has the greatest intentions. Yes, I'm going to make sauce with that, or I'm going to do all these things. Inevitably, time gets in the way, and something goes wrong, and this was happening across the board. And of course, that second bag would end up in the bin. If you're a great preserver, then, of course, this isn't happening. But these are the general things that are happening in Australia. One of the things that everybody, I guess, fails to discuss when... I'm supposed to be cooking, aren't I? But I'll do that in a minute. That fails to discuss is that, when we waste food, we waste all the resources that go with it. That is the water, that is the land. Of that 7.6 million tonnes, we take a land mass the size of whole size of Victoria it takes to grow that food that we put into landfill. And of course, there is electricity, there is all the resources, all the water, all the time, all the energy. Again, fighting climate change by reducing your food waste is such an enormous thing. I might take a break for a minute and talk to you quickly about this dish. Bread, one of the most wasted products in Australia. People get to the end, they've got, some slices of bread like this, and they're like, oh, well, I really don't know, and they get sick of making breadcrumbs. They don't necessarily want toast, so what are the things we can do? And I make this just purely to highlight that these are the ingredients, but also, hopefully, if I stop talking in time, there'll be this opportunity for you to have a bit of a taste of this. I've made a dish. It is a dish that was been made in Italy for generations with stale bread. If we look to our European counterparts, they really knew what to do when it came to food and using the whole of everything. I am not going to chop and everything on stage, but in this bowl you will see, I'm worried about tipping it up so I don't tip it all over the floor. That is some stale bread that has been soaked with some milk and some egg. Again, I'm using all the product that we know goes in the bin. There's a bit of leftover meat in there. That's got some speck in it. You don't necessarily, of course, have to use any animal product whatsoever. There are many, many alternatives. I'm using the data, so that's what we're doing. Bits of leftover meat. You could use chicken, you could use... If you weren't using meat, as I said, there's a lot of alternatives. There's some cheese, bits of rind that nobody wanted to use and was going to end up in the bin. That's all been put together, and it forms this dough. I'm going to call it a dough. We kind of let it sit for a little while and we get its flavours. And once it gets its flavours, we roll it into these little dumplings. Hopefully you can all see where you are. Now those dumplings simply go into a pot of boiling water with some salt until they float. We cook them for about 10 minutes. And just like that, you can serve them in some broth. Again, using a chicken carcass and leftover veg that's in the fridge that nobody wants to eat, that's sad and wilted and, wonky. I've made a broth. It could be a vegetable broth. This happens to be a chicken broth. Our steamed or our boiled dumplings will go into the broth. I've also looked at all the bits of sad herbs and the stems, that everybody thinks you can't use these. And of course, chop them up finely, they become a salsa verde. Put them in a bag in your freezer, use them for your stocks. Every part of every vegetable. I can't think of one thing that we can't find a use for. I can't. I'm sure someone will stump me, please don't do it today. But there's so much that ends up in the bin, and if you can't eat it, compost it. I'm not sure of what Victoria has, FOGO. Do you have FOGO here in Victoria? Yeah. We don't in South Australia yet. I know it's just been rolled out in New South Wales. You know, the way we compost, worm farms, there's somebody far more talented coming on after me that can have this conversation with you, but there's almost no reason for that to end up in landfill. I just can't think of one. And again, I understand that it's not intentional, but we take all of that ingredients and you will see by the time you taste, I turn that into 6 slices of bread, 2 eggs, an onion, some bits of leftover speck that were in the fridge, some bits of leftover cheese rind, some salt and pepper, a tiny bit of nutmeg, you've got the recipe, some sad herbs with a bit of olive oil, things that we have. You don't have to use that. A bit of Dijon mustard, some capers. You have a meal for 4 people. And I'm not looking at this meal purely from a food waste perspective, although that's what I'm here to talk about today. I would eat this by choice. The flavour is absolutely beautiful. And I think it's one of the things that's contributed to our food waste issue is we've just lost our connection with food. We don't really understand the stories of where it comes from. We've forgotten what it is to all sit down together or to prepare together, to shell peas. I know I sound like I'm 105 when I talk like that, but it's, well, you know, they were great memories for me as a kid, shelling peas. To get our hands in something because we're germophobic, you know, to get our hands on the food that we prepare, I think we've just kind of lost sight of that a little bit. And if we could think about the flavour that we miss out on, the joy that we miss out on, the community that we miss out on when we stop being connected to food. I shop at farmers markets. That's my thing. I'm not saying that everybody should. That's my preference. My husband says, I'll see you in about 8 hours. Because I go and I talk to, it is the most bucket-filling thing, and I'm sure we all don't have 8 hours to walk around a farmer's market, but to speak to the person who has grown your food, or to have your kids or your own garden, it is completely joyful. You will never, ever find anybody more passionate than people who grow food. You just won't. And it is such a thing to come home with their produce and to make the most of every single bit of it. If I'm making pumpkin soup, I turn the skins into nachos. You don't have to be like me, but it does give you a greater appreciation and just such a buzz, you know. If I serve you, if you come to my house for dinner, if you'd be game, and I've made pumpkin soup and I, you know, put those pumpkin skins in the oven, just a little bit of salt and pepper, some cumin, and I roast them up. And then I serve them with a bit of salsa from some leftover herbs and, you know, a tomato that's kind of looking like it's on its way out and a bit of onion. And you smile, and before I tell you, you know, what this is made from, you smile and you tell me that, oh, that's beautiful. There's nothing, the richness in that is I think, you know, astronomical. And I think we've kind of lost our way a little bit. We're getting there. I'm sure you haven't lost your way, you're here. The fact that you've chosen to come out on a Saturday afternoon and listen to me talk for almost 30 minutes now tells me that you and the community are incredibly passionate about this. You're doing everything that you can. You're here to try and understand more and to make change and talk to people in your community. And when I say I thank you for that, that is not an exaggeration. I think that it's astonishing work that we need to be doing, and we're taking steps in the right direction. I haven't talked about saving money because I think that that's a given. You know, everything that I've talked about will tell you how much further that makes your food go. Maybe, you know, I have a lot of people say to me, you're in a position of privilege, Mandy, that you can afford to shop at a farmer's market. And I think that makes me really sad because it shouldn't be privilege. We are a country with soils that all used to be magnificent, and we're working really hard, and there's a lot of people working really hard to get those soils back. But it shouldn't be a privilege to shop at a farmer's market. We should just be able to do so, and I'd like to see us get to a point where particularly my kids' will hopefully get the same privilege that I have. When I said it's not rocket science, I meant it. Everything that I've talked to you about today is so basic. I know that they're basic tips. I'm sure you all do them at home. The problem is most Australians aren't. So those behaviours that I talked about that contribute greatly to food waste at home, we need the country to take them on board. And I say, just imagine if every fifth Australian family made dumplings from the leftovers. The significant reduction in food waste in this country the data would be through the roof. Building the Great Unwaste was one of the most challenging things I've ever done, because that was a project that had to politically appeal to the Commonwealth, because it was their generous money that funded it. It had to enable every state and territory to get on board. Every local council had to be built in such a way that the local councils could take it, the state and territories could take it, the Commonwealth were okay with it. And then on top of that, it had to be okay for supermarkets to take on board, or a whole of industry. It was an enormous project. It was significant. It was the greatest thing I have ever done. It nearly destroyed me, because like everybody here, I'm incredibly passionate about what I do, and I do want to make a change, and I do want to make a difference. I've handed that baton on. It's not mine anymore. It never was mine. It was your taxpayer funds that paid for it. I hope I looked after every single cent that you gifted us to build it for you. But I've passed the baton, and I do urge you, the Great Unwaste was built on an enormous amount of data and rigour. Oz Harvest, Food Bank, Fair Share, the Great Unwaste, all of them, they have behavioural scientists involved, they are data-based, and I speak about the Great Unwaste only because I know what kind of research went into that. Jump on board, have a look at it, talk to your friends, do what you're doing, which is being here today. I would like to just say thank you so much, and so much for having me. Thank you so much for listening to me for 35 minutes. That was, it's amazing. I'm going to get some tasters ready for you. This is not vegan or vegetarian, so just letting you know. If you'd like to taste it, I'd love to do that. I'll try and do that on the side, because we'll have 5 minutes break, and then we have an amazing, far more interesting than me, speaker to come on board. But thank you so much for being here. Thank you.
Questions. Are you in a position to take questions
Yes.
while doing that?
Oh,
Yeah.
please, if there are, I missed the questions bit, far away.
No,
Well,
I was just saying we've got the opportunity to have some questions if Mandy's capable of doing the prep and talking at the same time.
I can do that.
Does anyone have any questions?
Thanks, Mandy. That was fantastic.
Thank you.
Could you just comment on the use of the freezer? For busy people, does it have any limitations in terms of categories of food that should not be frozen as compared to those that can safely be? How long can it sit there for? Can you comment on that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very good point. We say freezer is your friend, because it really is. There are very few things that can't be frozen, and none of them are about becoming dangerous. It's just about loss of quality. So example, mozzarella ball. I don't know why you'd ever have mozzarella left, but if you did, if you freeze that, the texture will change. But it's safe. I won't give you that. If you look on a fridge door, because every fridge manufacturer basically has a time limit to things. Meat is about 6 months. A bag of stock veggies, like, the things I was talking about, the peels from the onion, the wonky carrot, the stems, you're talking 12 months. They won't last that long, though. You'll hopefully dig into them. The one thing that stops people using a freezer really well is if you have a leftover meal, let's say it's a curry, people tend to just leave it in their fridge for a day or 2 days and then they look at it and go, oh, I forgot to eat it. And in a panic, they will grab it in its entirety, either if it's in a freezer-safe dish, or they'll put it into something and they'll put the whole lot in there. And it just becomes this big lump, right, that you find in your freezer 6 months later. You have no idea when you put it there. You don't know what it is anymore, and you're really hungry, and that is going to take 2 days to defrost. I would say when you're freezing food, particularly leftover curries, lasagnas, pastas, what have you, portion it into something. Your little containers that you've got, whatever you freeze in, label it and put that in. Then it becomes something that you could get out in the morning, put in the fridge, go to work, go wherever you're going during the day, it will be defrosted by night. But freezers are a really, really good food waste tool, absolutely.
On the topic of confidence and fear
Yep.
of food, where is the definitive source of we can go to with confidence about how long to use product that's been freezed after it's been defrosted? What would you say would be the most confidence building definitive source that we can? There's so much inconsistency.
It's so true, right? That's one of the issues with food in general, is the inconsistencies across social media and, for various things. End Food Waste Australia, OzHarvest, Fair Share, all of those organisations. The Great Unwaste has a lot, and I'm not there anymore, so I'm not pimping it for that reason. Has a lot of information, food storage. WRAP out of the UK, who are also Australia. There is something called an A to Z storage guide. WRAP's website has an enormous, I'm just trying to, what they call it, Love Food, Hate Waste. It's also in New South Wales, but it's a UK that has a library of information. The Great Unwaste is coming second to that. OzHarvest is starting to put more information out, but certainly WRAP and the Great Unwaste will have a lot of those, a lot of that information. Yeah. Anybody else? No. I got away with question time really light. Oh, nearly. Yes.
We talk about waste.
Yes.
But the worst place that you go is the supermarket. The fruit and vegetables are so expensive, and if you hear that most of the supermarkets want perfect food, fruit and veggies, like instead of, how your carrots intertwine or something if they're
Yes.
grown, they don't want those. So
Yeah.
to me, this is where a lot of waste is.
On farm, yeah. Well, unfortunately, and you can imagine what that's like to our growers and farmers who are, I don't have the exact information, but I can tell you the standards that are put on them are ridiculous. So much so that I believe some farms or manufacturers have machines, robotic machines that, I'm just going to use an apple as an example. The demand might be that the apple needs to be 6 centimetres in diameter, and it can't be wonky, and it can't be any of those things, and it passes through a conveyor belt, and if it picks up that it's not, it just gets tossed to the side. For a farmer, and we're looking at, some of the things we do with policy, is there needs to be a tax incentive to help the farmer to get that excess food, whether it's to food bank, that's one solution, or OzHarvest or wherever, because it costs them money. So they're already down in pocket because their apples aren't being sold, and then it costs them money to get it somewhere. So we need to help them. And yeah, we need to stop that capability of the major players being able to say that apple needs to be 6 centimetres in diameter. But as consumers, we need to be willing to buy the wonky apple and the wonky carrot. And I know that everybody in this room will have no issue with that. But there is a demand for perfection. I think it's just like convenience in general is a downfall for a lot of things, so is perfection. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people who will not buy that wonky carrot. And so the supermarkets were in a position to demand this perfection. It's policy, legislation. The Australian government is recruiting at the moment for a food council. That's 12, they're looking for 12 people to sit on the food council and help advise ag ministers, ministers for climate change. it's, you know, like everything, it's the carrot or the stick. You know, how do we make change? I think there are going to be circumstances in which the stick is required from the government, which to say you can no longer do that to farmers. We can't do that anymore. But it's a big policy change, but it's also consumers voting with their wallet, you know, with what they're willing to spend their money on.
Just got two more here.
Hi, Mandy. So I am doing a Bachelor of Nutrition at the moment and currently doing a unit in food policy.
Yeah.
So the World Health Organisation is stating that by 2050, and this is more of a personal question towards you,
Yeah.
that by 2050 we won't have enough food in the world.
Yeah.
How do you come to a place of calm when you hear something like that, knowing what you do?
Yeah.
Because I really struggle with it.
I don't. I don't come to a place of calm. I, like probably everybody in this room, will lie awake at night and get really distressed over the numbers and the data. And that's why even when I talk about the food waste numbers, I like to preface it with saying, please don't take this away as a horror story that we can't do anything about. There is going to require significant changes to food systems. My view is too simplistic, I understand this. I don't understand in a country with all this soil, with all these magnificent, beautiful people with their hands in the dirt, how A, we treat them so badly, and we do in this country, but also how we can't fix this. Why can't we help them put money back into the soil to regenerate our soils? You know, we have this opportunity to be one of the healthiest countries on the planet. We have the resources. We have just butchered them. We have wasted them. We have taken advantage of a lot that goes on. But these discussions and you showing up today, and I know I've said that repeatedly, but it is what makes change. And this food council, you know, I've applied to get on that food council. It's unlikely that I will get a space on there, but it means we don't give up. So I keep talking, we keep going out there, we keep having these conversations. And that is about the carrot, right? This is doable, this is fixable. Food waste is a fixable issue. Our soils are a fixable issue. Our respect and care for our producers and farmers is a fixable issue. But I agree with you, it can really destroy you. But the fact that you think about it is a step in the right direction.
Hi again. Just on technology that you mentioned a bit about freezers, can you comment on microwaves?
You wouldn't like my comment on microwaves.
Well, there seem to be two categories of people, those who love them and those who hate them. And for defrosting quickly and perhaps for cooking more generally, could you just comment?
Look, what I will say is if having a microwave stops you from putting it in the bin because you can defrost it, then go for it. My fear of microwaves comes from complete ignorance. I just don't like them because the same reason I don't cook with a Thermomix, and I love Thermomix, but I don't cook because I am a cook who wants to get my hands in things and I want to smell it and I want to churn it, and I'm a control freak. So I want to see it all and do it. My brother-in-law is a nuclear physicist. He thinks I'm an absolute idiot for my thoughts on microwaves. But I don't know, I don't like the thought of my food being nuked. And in that sense, I think about, it's the same, so I'm a fermenter, you know, this is super weird, but I ferment, say, chilies with some whatever, herbs, whatever, and when it comes time to blending them up, that's alive, right? So I've taken something that's beautiful and grown in the earth and full of life and glorious, and then I've put it in conditions to which it gets more life, right? So it's so good for us because it has all this life. And then I put it in the blender to make the sauce. And when I turn the blender on, I have to go like this because I'm like, I feel like they're all going, ah! It's the same with the microwave. It's a personal thing. However, as I said, if it stops you from throwing something out, I'm all for it. I'm not doing a very good job. Imagine if I was cooking and talking. Like, I can't even serve and talk.
I think we've got one more question in the
Okay,
centre
far
there.
away.
Actually, I've got a question, but two other things. There is a company in Australia called Farmers Pick that my daughter actually
Yes.
uses that collects and sells on food from farmers that are an inch too short or have got, you know, 2 bits of carrot, 2 legs rather than one. And that quality of food is really good.
Yes.
And also, France passed legislation last year that all food waste from supermarkets has to go to food rescue, which I don't know why Australia can't do that.
Yeah.
Rice.
Rice?
I have read that reusing rice, or you have to be careful with storing cooked rice because the bacteria in it starts to grow well before you see visible evidence of
Yep.
it being off.
So, yeah, I think, look, let me preface that with saying I'm not a food scientist. I've applied to do nutrition next year, so I'll be getting in touch with you and I'll steal your exams. Freeze it. You know, yes, I understand the bacteria issue with rice, but, you know, the next day it's also full of resistant starch, which is apparently yet, another superfood for us when we're having glycemic indexes, in our bodies, glycemic responses that are going through the roof. Resistant starch is amazing. If you've got that much that you're concerned about it, I would freeze it. It's safe. Yeah. No, but it's a valid point, right? People, again, get really fearful. I wish I understood, and I probably should go and find out the science behind it so that I could tell you not to be so frightened. But I do know that we're encouraged now to cook rice and put it in the fridge and eat it the next day because it's better for us. Yeah. Oh, am I done? Right. How long did I go for? I'm so sorry for everybody.
You're perfectly timed. There's 3 minutes left.
Well, I'm going to just quietly be on the side here. Are we having a bit of a break, or are we going straight into it?
This is going to head up, but
I'll just
hand some of those out.
Do you mind if I share a stage hog with you?
You're happy to keep chipping away.
I'll just be quiet. I might turn my mic off, just in case I don't get excited by something James says. I go, yes. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Mandy. Now we're handing over to James, and actually I feel like so many of the questions and Mandy's comments are going to link so beautifully into what James is going to talk about. James McLennan is the CEO and founder of Farm My School, a not-for-profit transforming underutilised school grounds into regenerative farms that nourish, educate and connect communities. James lives and breathes environmental conservation, preservation and regeneration. Over the last 15 years, James has dreamed, designed, developed and implemented educational programs to engage people of all ages with their surrounding environment. Welcome, James. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Can everyone hear me okay? Or is that? No. Yeah. Low battery. Is that? No. There is a low battery. I'll just keep talking. See if, yep, coming through. Beautiful.
That's good, James.
Excellent. Awesome. Thank you for having me. Thank you for sharing the stage with me, Mandy. It's lovely to be up here with you. I think in that little bio, that might be an old bio, so I'm showing my age. It's probably the last 20 years that I've been doing this education sort of stuff. And I'm also showing my age because Jane said before, oh, you look like Britney Spears with the headset on. I was thinking I look more like Madonna, and so it's probably, again, showing my age. It is lovely to be here with you today on Wadawurrung Country. For me, acknowledging traditional owners is always, I guess, as a grower, as an educator, as a person who loves to share stories and knowledge. I always draw on First Nations perspectives before I, do any of these, whether it is growing in the soil, whether it is bringing a group of people together of any age to actually talk. But yeah, acknowledging First Nations is paramount, and I think, especially in an environmental perspective, when we look at their culture and the way they saw themselves as an extension of the country, and how they treated it was actually how it treated them when they worked on country and worked to regenerate country, and they are the original regenerators for over 65,000 years they've been doing it on this land. But But it gave them everything they needed: food, fibre, medicine, water, shelter. So I think acknowledging First Nations is paramount, and I think we need to look to their culture and their knowledge into the future to actually create a better environment and better society in general. So it is lovely to be here today. It's lovely to follow Mandy. I'm not cooking anything, but I'll definitely eat something while I'm talking, or probably not. But yeah, I'm going to start by talking about Farm My School to start with, and then go into a bit more broader around what people can do in their own world, in their lives, at homes, or in their offices, or wherever it may be, to actually make a difference, as Mandy did as well. I guess Farm My School came about. I was a teacher. I'm from a regenerative farm originally, a beef and lamb farm from southwest Victoria. I studied outdoor ed. I taught for a number of years. I lectured for a number of years. And I just kept on seeing this disconnect between people and their environment. We have this nature deficit disorder, which sort of is just basically people not connecting with nature or spending enough time in the natural world. When I was teaching, I saw it with the kids, I saw it with the other teachers, I saw it with the families, but I also saw a massive opportunity within schools. And I thought, imagine if schools could actually feed the community. Imagine if schools had farms in them, if we could actually grow food within schools. And I know you're all thinking, oh, there's definitely Alexander Kitchen Garden Program, and there's garden programs in schools. But I guess I also looked at them as brilliant. They attract the kids. The students, it's like an epicenter for the school. They love it. They hang out there. They thrive there. They can't get enough of it. They want to sort of interact with it and be in there. It's their favourite place in the school. However, often underutilised. Often it's reliant on one parent or one teacher who's passionate, who's not paid any extra. They haven't got a time allocation towards those school gardens. And they do it out of the goodness of their heart or because they see the benefits of it. But when they leave, that garden falls apart. Through summer, it might not be tended to or watered. It often gets neglected, and in southern Victoria, it's the most productive time of the year. We can be growing all the fruits and veggies, and it's in absolute abundance. So what's going wrong with those gardens? Why can't they be growing more, making it a commercial model? For me, seeing a principal come into those gardens and actually take prospective parents or get the photo opportunity with a politician who comes to the school, yet it's the same principals who don't allocate any money to those school gardens. And often those school gardens aren't even utilised in all the curriculum, where they could be. They could be used in every single year level, every single subject. There's the key strand of sustainability in Victoria, which we could be relating these school gardens to science, to maths, to media, to tech, to geography, whatever it is, we can somehow make it tangible learning. Schools are in communities already, so we could be growing and feeding that community. Schools have amazing facilities that are only used for 40 weeks of the year. For the other 12 weeks, they sit there idle. Between 3 o'clock in the afternoon and 9 o'clock in the morning, they sit there, all these classrooms, all these buildings. Sometimes they're used, but often not. So again, how come we can't be using them? The other scary thing in Australia is urban sprawl and housing estates taking over beautiful arable soil that was once the sort of food bowl for major centres, or even around Geelong, the food bowl for Melbourne. And not only that, we are losing our family farms. So family farms were the foundation of a lot of Australian industry, and yet now the average age of a farm in Australia is 65. We are about to go into a phase where family farms are no longer. I can't go and buy a farm. I'm still lucky enough to have our family farm in southwestern Victoria, but I was born into that. For me, I'm not a young bloke, what am I talking about? For a 18-year-old or a 25-year-old, for them to buy a parcel of land to farm, it can't happen. It's too expensive. Plus, they want to be in a place where there's social interaction and probably close to a major centre like Geelong, so it doesn't make sense. So we're losing this knowledge of farming, and especially regenerative farming. So we're about to experience quite a key point in Australian history which we need to overcome. I guess all these things were feeding into a few mates and I, a couple of mates, we came up with this whole concept of Farm My School. And we thought, well, imagine if we actually partnered with a school, we partnered with the local health organisation, and I'll come to that a bit more in detail, but we actually used this disused land or underutilised land within schools to put in commercial market gardens. We could grow food regeneratively. We could employ farmers to actually work that land. Their sole responsibility is to grow food. They could actually work with students, instant workforce. We could actually train up some of the students, giving them a Cert 3 in horticulture through a school-based traineeship. So we could be educating and creating pathways into farming. We could use the school facilities outside of school hours, whether it be the land or whether it be the classrooms, whether it be the disused shed or the tanks that ever so many schools have tanks on their property that aren't actually plumbed into anything in the school. We could be using lawnmowers, tractors, you name it, facilities within that school to actually not only educate the kids, but educate the community as well. The more and more we looked at this, the more and more we were thinking, this is ridiculous. This is a simple idea, but actually make perfect sense. The benefits for the students, for the teachers, for the community, it's tangible learning, it's climate mitigation, it's health because they're eating healthier foods, we're educating them on that. Let's give it a crack. So and I actually have no idea what my slides are, so I'm just, we'll see what comes up next. There we go, perfect. So back in 2022, we'd been sort of, telling the story of Farm My School, the concept of how it could look. And an organisation called Bellarine Community Health heard about it. And they were like, hey, that's a bloody good idea. That ticks all of our strategic goals. It's providing healthy food to local families and feeding students. And we want to get funding to see that happen on the Bellarine. So they went and got some Victorian government funding from the Engage grant, which was $123,000. And we thought, you beauty, we've hit the jackpot. And that obviously didn't go very far at all. But we met Bellarine Secondary College through Bellarine Community Health. And Bellarine Secondary College happened to have pretty much everything I've just outlined, the tanks, a tractor, sheds, and a disused soccer pitch. This disused soccer pitch, we thought we could actually turn into a market garden. We could employ those farmers. We could bring in other schools to educate other schools on how to grow food, healthy soil, worms, composting, you name it. We could bring in, other outside communities to do workshops, corporate groups. It could be an epicentre for everything sustainable farming, regenerative farming. So we had this parcel of land and we thought, how are we going to convert that into this market garden? It was literally this sandy soil, terrible, shocking soil that was covered in galenia, which is blanket weed, or kikuya, rabbit warrens. It was this occupational health and safety sort of risk that the school had to slash, but students weren't able to go in there because all the rabbit warrens, they could fall over and hurt themselves, so they were just putting money into it. And we thought, imagine if we, I think I'd had a couple of red wines by this stage one night, and I said, let's actually get people to come in and transform this. They can do the work for us, but we'll ticket it as a no-dig garden workshop. So we'll have people come in and they can pay, they can do the work for us, and we'll engage an audience. In fact, let's do this over 24 hours. Let's do this event called the Build a Farm in a Day. 24-hour no-dig gardening workshops. We'll invite Costa, he'll come, sure, and Costa did come. And so we set the date, 1st of October, 2022. We had over 600 paid guests turn up to this event. We started at 9 o'clock on the Saturday morning and we showed them how to do it. We had forming boxes where the first 45 people was like, okay, this is the deal. Put cardboard underneath, all the organic inputs in, manure, compost, straw, coffee grinds, manure, straw, coffee grinds, keep going. And then once it's full, you pop it off and you move it along. These boxes were the width of the bed and we basically would make them around 20 metres long and then we'd go to the next one and keep going. After about the first hour and a half, the next 45 arrived. Those first 45 didn't leave. They stayed, they were in, they were engaged and they were a part of this, this movement, this activation of community opportunity and power and activism, and it was bloody amazing. We had food trucks there, we had bands playing, and we built 2.2 linear kilometres of garden beds in that 24 hours. We worked through the night, we had spotlights out on the pitch, and it was an amazing celebration. The 2.2 linear kilometres were nothing compared to the community we engaged, and also demonstrating what possibility that is at our fingertips. It just has to be some stubborn person who stands up and says, well, let's make some change. And I'm seeing a few stubborn people in this room. That's our site now. That was February 2024. We've just got our second polytunnel yesterday. So that big white thing you can see on the screen is a polytunnel, 20 metres long, 6.5 metres wide. On that site now we have 3.2 linear kilometres of garden beds. We're growing an average of 250 kilos of veg a week. In February, March, April, we're growing upwards of 750 kilos a week. That was the Build a Farm in a Day event. I'll get to it a bit in a moment, but we are about to do our second Build a Farm in a Day event. I'll put it up on the screen, but at Colac Secondary College. Here's a little clip from Bellarine Secondary College. So the site's now 3 years old since that event, and we've had a lot of growth, obviously, since then, pardon the pun. One of the first parts of the project we kicked off very soon after that was obviously planting out the garden. We employed a farmer in January of 2023, and we started harvesting about the same time. So we had lettuces coming out, we had tomatoes coming out very, very soon after. So we started our Veggie Box program. Our Veggie Box program is basically feeding the local community with our amazing organically grown, not certified, but organic principles, regenerative food that is harvested either that day or the day before and goes directly out into the community. The school community, being teachers, parents, students, obviously they get a discount, so $50 for an organic box of veggies, which looks like that photo on the screen. That's a standard Veggie Box. The broader community pay a huge price of $70. We want to make it affordable and accessible, so we're always looking at ways we can subsidise that, whether it's through grants. We've just got a grant now called Farm to Family, actually, which is going to be fully subsidised boxes for families who need it. This is something that we're really passionate about, is actually providing great quality food to families who need it. The Bellarine is actually an affluent area, but North Bellarine is actually quite a low socioeconomic community. There's pockets of really low-income families, huge food insecurity who struggle to put food on the table, if at all. There's a lot of students from Bellarine Secondary College that actually bust out from East Geelong. So yeah, the demographic we're working with is quite a hard done by community. So we're working with them to re-engage them into the food system and educate them as well. The Veggie Boxes, we thought, at that price we should be able to sell it to the teachers alone. Like we could sell probably 50 boxes a week. We put it on sale. The first week we sold 3 boxes. So I guess looking at this model, we aim to be a commercially viable farm by about year 3, year 4. To get it up and running, we need seed funding, but I guess I'll go through the other sort of components that actually are the ancillary incomes as well. But the Veggie Box is our main one, and it's something we're about to start delivery for in the next few weeks as well, into Clifton Springs, Drysdale and Curlewis, and then we'll sort of expand over the Bellarine and perhaps into Geelong as well. School lunches, obviously it makes sense that we want to be getting this food into the students. If we can sell at a wholesale price to the school canteen, then that makes perfect sense because it's going to get straight into the students. I'm not sure how many people of you have been into a school recently, but school canteens are disgusting. They are literally, as they were 15, 20, 30 years ago, they're still selling your crispy chicken strips, like tenderloins they're called, the meatball subs, they're doing hot chips. In fact, my first teaching job in Melbourne, I'd just left uni in Bendigo, went down to do my first, I was all excited as a new grad, and I was like, oh, I'll go and check out the canteen, just out of interest, see what they're serving, and they were selling hot chips. If that wasn't alarming enough, I was like, oh, hot chips, sort of like as a shock. And they're like, yeah, we mix the salt 50% with 50% sugar. Makes the kids addicted and they buy more. I was like, oh, okay. So next year we're doing a complete overhaul of the canteen and we're trying to get a person from hospitality, whether it's a chef, whether it's a cook, who's passionate about food and can actually turn our seconds, as we've already talked about, farmers' waste. If we have hail damage or we have large rains come through or we have high winds and things that are a bit damaged that don't look good in our boxes, we would rather that be actually used. We can still sell it for wholesale price to this chef in the canteen. They can make amazing produce or food and sell it directly to the students. The food we're harvesting, because it's so fresh, because the soil is absolutely profound now, tastes so much better, so much sweeter, so much nutrient-dense food is actually tastier, is sweeter. So all of a sudden, at the moment, we've got broad beans going off. Well, most kids with broad beans be like, ugh, gross. If we give broad beans to the students here or any other students coming through, they're like, oh, it's sweet. It's like, yeah, it's sweet. It's how a broad bean should taste. The food tastes better. We also sell it to food tech as a part of their cooking program. If they can actually learn about seasonal produce and locally grown, obviously, like 100 metres away, then that's going to filter through the school too, because we can't just walk up to a family and go, here's your veggie box. Yep, there's kohlrabi. There's exotic things like eggplants or zucchinis that you might not have ever seen before, because a lot of these families haven't seen them before. In fact, a lot of people you walk out the street with a, let's say it's a finger eggplant, they haven't seen them before. So we have to actually re-engage people into the food cycle. We've got this gap of actually knowledge around how to use this produce. Our Farmer Incubator program, we've now employed 3 school-based trainees. We're about to employ 2 more and potentially even 2 more after that very soon after. This is a part of their curriculum. So we can actually give them a school-based traineeship while they're completing VCE. They get a Cert 3 in horticulture. They're working for us, paid 2 days a week. Charlie, who is in the middle, and Paul, who is on the right, I think, one of the boys anyway, they were going to drop out at year 10. Paul's actually an Indigenous student who was really struggling with school. In fact, he was wagging his class and actually coming out to the farm and spending time with our farmers and working with them. And they're like, why don't you do the traineeship, mate? Like, you'd be perfect. He was doing his mechanics apprenticeship and was hating it. He thought that just, getting treated like crap was actually, that's work. He started working with us 2 years on, and Charlie's 2 years on too. They've both, Charlie's just finished this week. Paul's about to finish in a few weeks' time with a Cert 3 in horticulture, with a pathway into farming, which they never would have thought of before, and giving them, they're passionate, they're loving it, they're absolutely thriving in this new work role. So I guess we're giving students opportunities. They don't need the land, because the land's there, but there's also work opportunities in other farms and in our future schools as well, because we need regenerative farmers. Our education program, it obviously makes sense that we're educating the students at Bellarine Secondary College, but we also have other students coming into the school to learn about what we're doing. That's a paid service as well, like Series in Melbourne. We're pretty much covering our costs, so we want to make it as affordable as possible for students to come in, and we realise that actually buses is the hardest part for a lot of schools, so if we can keep the prices down to make it as attractive as possible, hopefully these schools will pick up a few ideas, whether it is worm farms, whether it's composting, whether it's chickens, and implement that into their school too. As I mentioned before, it's all aligned to the curriculum. So we could be doing literally Year 12 chemistry class, looking at liquid fertilisers. And what if the liquid fertilisers that we've made out of waste bananas from the food relief place up the road, what if that was going to landfill? How much methane would that be creating if we jammed the same amount of bananas into an airtight vessel and we capture the methane off that and we convert that to carbon through a very simple equation? All of a sudden the chemistry teachers start lighting up going, can we do that? Is that possible? And so, the conversations start rolling. We had a science teacher who was like, yeah, it's great for the ag and hort kids, but it's, that's about it. I was like, oh, okay. What are you teaching at the moment in Year 9 science? Carbon cycle? It's like, yeah, okay. So she's now engaging with the farm a few times a year with her Year 9 science classes. Corporate experiences. This one for us is great, and we really want to be promoting it. It's any business, any team activity, any Christmas party we're doing this year. We want to get as many people out to our farms as possible. We want them to engage with, we want them to learn. We also want to give them a really positive experience of, you know, understanding where our food's coming from, and getting their hands into the soil and actually learning from it as well. But seeing also what's available. This is a great one for us too, because if it is a corporate group and they've got some serious coin behind them, they could actually be partnering with us or partnering with other organisations who are doing projects like this to fund it. And, you know, they tick off their boxes for the year. But it is, you know, hopefully creating opportunities for other projects to get it started. Our Nourish workshops. So we have had an amazing selection of, whether it be celebrity chefs, master chef alumni, authors, high-profile people come out and actually do cooking workshops from the food tech rooms at Bellarine Secondary College, or gardening workshops as well. And this is basically inviting anyone from the community to come in, paying a very small fee and having an amazing experience about everything from low-waste cooking to using the whole veg to whatever it is, but it's profound. We've had Joe Barrett, as you can probably see on the screen. We've had Nornie Barrow. We're about to have Mandy Hall. No, we'll talk about that later. But it's literally one of the most, like, there's a lot of moments where I walk into Bellarine and just go, oh, it's job done, tick. Like, for me, like, there was one experience when Nornie was actually in the room cooking actually crocodile tongue. And there was even vegetarians in the room who were like, I'm going to try this, and they absolutely just were mind blown. And then Warrigal Green saltbush tempura with this absolutely beautiful wombok slaw as well. But yeah, walking into the room, and I always sort of co-facilitate with the chef or with the author or whoever, and there was an 8-year-old girl and there was an 83-year-old woman. They'd never met each other, but they were actually cooking next to each other and they were telling stories and laughing, and that intergenerational exchange was absolutely beautiful. And that's what food should be. Food has been like this for thousands of years. It's brought people and communities together, and we've lost that as well, which that cultural sort of part of food has been lost, and it's really quite sad, but hopefully we can regain that. So, as I mentioned, we are so excited to be working with Colac Secondary College. We've partnered with Colac Area Health, Colac Otway Shire, and we've just received $762,000 from Vic Health to actually start this farm at Colac Secondary College. That's the site there. It's a 1.5 acre parcel of land which was their ag hort area, had been since 1972, and then's been just sort of left a little bit, to sort of on the wayside for the last few years. There's our plan, 3.4 linear kilometres, so 200 metres more than what Bellarine is. And we will be converting that in just under a month's time into that, pretty much what that plan looks like. There it is. Get your phones out, get your QR code scanners out, scan the QR code. We had 600 for Bellarine, and we're aiming for about 1,200 for Colac. And tickets are selling like hotcakes, and it's about to spike. I can guarantee it. We've got Costa coming back. We've got Mandy's been with Simon Tui. Simon's doing a cooking demonstration. We've got Matthew Evans, the gourmet farmer. We've got Nornie's coming, Nornie Barrows, and Nornie's just joined our board as well. So it's sort of little, attracting amazing people. We'll have bands playing again throughout the 24 hours. We'll have food trucks. We've got a little quiet zone where we have films playing as well. So it's going to be a beautiful event to be a part of. If you missed the QR code, go to our website. I'm trying to leave it up as long as I can, but excuse me. So I guess as you know, in the blurb of today, I was wanting to talk about how you can create change, how we can all create change, and I guess anyone can create change. And I guess for me, yes, there's food councils happening that Mandy mentioned, or there's, but what can we all do on a grassroots level? And that grassroots level might sort of evolve into bigger, bubble away for a bit and then explode. So whether it is setting up your own compost system, or whether it is setting up, a worm farm, and I'm probably, as Mandy mentioned before, I'm sure I'm speaking to the converted already, but these little simple things do make a huge difference. And whether it's in your household or you're creating a street composting system, there's so many opportunities. Excuse me. So for me, and Mandy's already spoken about this absolutely beautifully, but setting up a composting system, or before you even do that, reducing and reusing, obviously, is as Mandy's spoken about. But composting is such an easy system which can go horribly wrong if you don't get it right. And I guess whether you've got a small space or a large space, there's different methods for you. There's bokashi, which you can do on your bench top. There's cupboard compost, which you can do with a plastic bag and stick it in your cupboard and let it do its thing. Or you can obviously have a base system like on the screen. You can have your typical tub. I guess what's going into your compost bin is going to be key, and making sure you're having a sort of about 50-50 most times of the year of nitrogen, being food scraps or lawn trimmings, green sort of waste, coffee grinds, all nitrogen, to carbon, being cardboard, newspaper, straw, dry leaves. So when you add your food waste, don't just keep adding food waste, you add the same amount in weight of carbon. That's going to be the first thing to balance out your compost so it doesn't stink. Good compost shouldn't stink. It should smell like a natural environment or a forest. It's a living thing, so yes, you're going to have living things in it, and bugs and insects and spiders and maybe a slug. And if you're doing a bay system like this, it won't have too many living things in it initially because it's going to be about 65 degrees. So it does create a heap of heat, and that's the bacteria and microbes kicking into action and actually starting to break it down. The second one, which I mentioned before, so making lasagna or a no-dig garden. This is how we transformed the pretty pathetic soil at Bellarine Secondary College into this beautiful soil, and it literally was through layers of nitrogens and carbons. So starting with cardboard. Cardboard suppresses weeds and any sort of seeds in the soil too. It also creates a beautiful environment for microbes and bacteria in the residual soil to actually activate and sort of come to life and hold that moisture in for them. All of the stuff on top, whether it be seaweed and newspaper and coffee grinds and manure and whatever else, is going to basically compost down on the top of the soil and create really fertile, rich soil. If you're time poor or you can't wait to actually get planting, what you can actually do is get really high quality composted compost, if that makes sense. Make little pockets within your lasagna and then basically plant directly into that. Once the plant has actually outgrown that root bowl, it'll then start feeding into all this other stuff that's created the nutrients and will continue to grow. Over time, you can then actually work that into the soil, the indigenous soil underneath, and get that microbial activity sort of really firing along. There is a question, is there? We can hold off, let's hold off to questions, we'll get to questions. And then community. Now for me, I feel privileged to be, obviously I mentioned before, off a farm in southwestern Victoria, which our family still owns that farm, but I also own 12 acres in the Otways in Pennyroyal. And we have this photo is of our property. And we've actually done this, and this is, I think, for me, the most beautiful part of food is actually growing as a community. If you can actually access some land, whether it's your land, whether it's other people's land, whether it is the verge, whether it's whatever it is, probably get permission in some settings, just go for it in other settings. But if you can grow together, it makes sense. It's what was done for thousands of years, and we've lost it, I reckon, in the last sort of 30 years especially. So we are doing this little parcel of land you can see, which will be close to 1 kilometre of garden. No, it won't. It will be about 600-700 metres of garden beds when we get it sort of finished. We're doing this with about eventually 5 families, currently 4 families. But we come together once a month. We have a working bee. We've done a no-dig garden in this system as well. And then people swing in when they can, do what they can, do a weed, do a water, plant some lettuce or whatever needs to be topped up. And then when we have our working bees, we actually come back together and we preserve, we cook, we have a lunch, sit down lunch together, we share knowledge. Someone's always on kid duty because there's a lot of kids running around. And it's a beautiful thing to share together. It's sharing knowledge, it's sharing stories, it's sharing experiences, and together you get this byproduct of vegetables. As we continue to work the soil, and similar to Farm My School too, the microbial activity in the soil is going directly into those plants and creating nutrient-dense food. And when we eat that, it is actually altering our gut biome very, very quickly, and it is then affecting our mental health and well-being and making us feel better. In a lot of cases, reducing mental health, and so it has profound health and well-being implications. In fact, we did a study recently with the Food and Mood Centre of Deakin University. Professor Felice Jacka, who's one of the leading professors globally on this stuff, came out and worked with us and a group of students. We had 20 students from Bellarine Secondary College, 20 students from Geelong High School, completely separate to Farm My School programs. They just did as they normally would. The students from Bellarine Secondary College had to engage with the farm at least 1 hour a week. They were getting food boxes which they had to take home and cook with their families. We were doing cooking workshops with them so they could actually learn about the seasonal produce that they were getting recipe cards. We were trying to sort of, get them excited about it. And Food and Mood Centre were monitoring the soil health over these few weeks. They were doing skin analysis testing, hair follicle testing, and they were doing stool testing. They saw a dramatic difference in these students within 2.5 weeks of their gut biome changing. The teachers were reporting evidence of the engagement of these students grew dramatically over the 12 weeks. Excuse me. I had one of the parents of the girls, and this was actually, I'll rewind a bit. This girl I met very early on when we started at Bellarine. She was a year 7 or 8 at the time, and she was like, "Oh, I'm not going to do that. I'm allergic to dirt." So, okay. Firstly, this isn't dirt, so it's soil. So that might, she didn't like that joke at all. Anyway, a few years passed, and I discovered that she was actually one of the students who were enrolled in the Farm My School elective, which is a year 10 elective. They come out there and working. They were like, "Oh, great, the dirt allergy's obviously gone." But then she was actually a student in this study. Now, this student had diagnosed with anxiety and depression, had eating disorders, weight issues. She had Tourette's. Classic case of that nature deficit disorder I was telling before, and a lot of sort of other symptoms that came up. Her mum, who I had never met before, came up to me at an event we were running at the school, and it was about week 4 or week 5 of the study, and she said to me, "What have you done with my daughter?" And found out who it was, and she said, I am not recognising her. She's a different girl. We're getting along to start with. We're actually communicating. We're cooking together. She hasn't had a tic or an outbreak in the last few days, which typically, with her Tourette's, she has one every hour. And, I mean, all this was anecdotal evidence at the time, but we saw very, very quickly with the data that was coming back how profound this study was. And when we look at the studies, like we look at the data, we look at the stats, over 95% of youth of today are not eating the required amounts of fruit and veg. It's I think 4.6 or something percent is, so 95.4 are malnourished essentially, which is absolutely absurd. And ultra-processed foods are, creating even more of a problem with that. The other one that we mentioned before, Mandy, at the start with neurodiverse kids as well. In a low-income family, 1 in 4 kids are actually starting school with neurodiverse conditions or disorders, which is absolutely profound. 1 in 4. We're about to do a study which is led on from Felice's work with a professor locally around perinatal and prenatal women. and how the impact of their diet for 20 weeks in their pregnancy can dramatically alter that. He's already got the data. He already knows how it's going to turn out, but we're going to be supplying boxes to 550 women over 20 weeks of their pregnancy for 2 years. Excuse me. To show that actually diet and good food can have a dramatic difference on health and, not just of people, but of unborn babies, and which is pretty exciting. So, with that, I'm inviting you all to start a revolution. Go out and start gardening on your verge, or start a compost, or start a conversation with your neighbour. Go out and, go to Simon's new market and start talking to producers. I think, as Mandy said, talking to producers is a really beautiful thing. When did you harvest this stalk? Whatever herb it is you're buying, what do you use? Sprays? Is it pesticide free? What's your process behind it? So I guess finding that information directly from the source is a really empowering thing to have. And I guess also, like, when we look at a carrot from a farmer's market, sorry, I'll have a quick drink. A lot of studies are showing that carrot, you'd have to eat 5-6 carrots from a supermarket to actually equate to that carrot, because those carrots have been harvested so long ago. The conditions or the soil they've been grown in is nowhere near what other farmers are growing their food in, or it could be that they've been stored for such a long period of time. The apple conversation we had before. Well, an apple, if you buy it from the supermarket, could have been picked 9 months ago. It's coated in a cornstarch resin to preserve it. It's then stored in an airtight vessel to basically keep it sort of unripe because it was picked unripe, and then it's pumped with gases to actually ripen it, and then it's put on the supermarket shelves, and not to mention it's been like carted all the way to Sydney to the distribution hub, and then carted back to wherever, and it could be only kilometres from where it was grown. Classic story, I was living up in Darwin, and there was a mango farmer on the side of the road who was selling his trays of mangoes for $8. And in Coles, I shouldn't have mentioned that, sorry, take that back. But in that supermarket, they were $3.50 for a mango, and those mangoes were actually from his farm. And not only that, those mangoes had been picked from his farm, they'd been trucked down to Sydney to the distribution hub of Coles, and then trucked back to Darwin. And they'd been, trucked everywhere. But that was weeks ago. So that was probably 3 weeks ago that had been picked down, up and back, and then, slapped on a huge fee. So it doesn't make sense. Knowing where your food is coming from is a really empowering and, beautiful thing to have. That is... I can keep talking for hours. I could have kept talking about what the stuff Mandy was talking about. I wanted to get up here and cook with you and talk with you. But if you want to find out anything more of Farm My School, jump onto our websites, jump onto social media. If you're on social media, I don't condone it. Email our team at the email there, and that link should take you directly to our website as well. How do we go for time?
You're doing really well. We've got time for some questions.
Great. Happy to answer any questions about... Thank you. There was a question over here before. Do we have mics?
We do.
Yeah. Yeah, over there.
Thank you. I was just going to say that I'm impatient to start my own revolution in my backyard, and so I was thinking I've got grass. I'd really like to have a vegetable garden. So if you dig the grass and you lay your lasagna layers, about how long would you have to wait till you can start using it as a garden? Yeah, good
question. What sort of grass have you got?
Not sure.
It could be kikuyu, if it's kikuyu, which we had kikuyu, that's fine. Kikuyu, ideal, so it's the rhizome one that sort of, runs off and just keeps...
Say there's that in there.
Yeah. So great. It's an amazing plant, but it's a terrible plant. So ideally, if you can dig it out, and actually it's quite cathartic. Don't go to a yoga class for mindfulness, dig out kikuyu. No, it's just scraping it underneath it and sort of taking off, unfortunately, the topsoil, but just getting those rhizomes out and then laying cardboard straight away flat. I think, like typically under lawn, your soil's quite healthy. Like the lawn covers the soil and actually creates quite a beautiful environment for soil. But yeah, unfortunately, you need to take off that top layer if it's kikuyu. If you want to be really sure to smother the kikuyu, that's really going to set it back. Just cardboard, heaps of cardboard. You can do 4 or 5 layers, or wet newspaper. And wetting cardboard actually is better too than dry cardboard. Make sure the tape's off it. Don't use glossy cardboard or glossy paper. And then go from there. Start building. You can literally build in a day and plant into it that afternoon. So yeah, if you use like some really beautiful, nicely aged compost that you then make your little wells in your lasagna, you can plant straight away. But if you let it just sit, and the last layer ideally is straw, like pea straw or something else to protect the soil. If you don't plant in it straight away, you're going to have sort of weeds trying to come up, and so yeah, ideally planting it out straight away is best case.
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you. You have such a beautiful project in your hands with a huge replicability and scalability in many other schools around the region. So that's amazing. My question is probably a little bit more technical, go through the maintenance and probably the workforce. So how do you keep the motivation students to keep working into the growings, and they don't see this as another, not as a job, they're not getting paid for it, but they have to work like 1 hour a week or a day, I don't know. So yeah, a little bit of that way. You also mentioned how to create the community, how to involve the community into this process through volunteer. Again, I think as big as the grow is, the much work you need on it, and you need to provide these activities and to provide these strategies to, crop and grow and water. And so tell us about.
Yeah, no, great question. And there's lots in there. So I'll rant a bit and I'll go tangents. Firstly, bring back corporal punishment the students, and I think any teachers in the room. Yep. Students often initially it's a foreign environment to be outside, tragically. So they're a bit, and a lot of teachers are similar too. However, students very quickly learn and become comfortable in the natural world. When we get students out, the first few weeks are pretty, not much gets done. Yes, there's behavioural stuff. Yes, there's always stuff going on. However, they very quickly learn that actually they feel the happiest, calmest, like most peaceful, most connected in the farm or when they're outside. So that's win number one. They love coming out. It's not just the students who are like hating class and want to wag class like Paul I mentioned before. It's actually most students love being out there. The other thing is that a lot of the students, and I mentioned before how we want to be working with low socioeconomic schools, a lot of these students, and particularly the male kids, haven't got positive male role models in their lives. Paul's a classic example. His dad left when he was 8. There's other students in the school who have never had a male role model, left, divorced, whatever it is, which is really tragic. So when we start seeing, so Clary we've got I think he's 32, and Tom who's 28, both farmers. We've just employed Katie who's going to be a farmer for Colac. So these are beautiful young mentors, essentially. Yes, they're amazing farmers and regenerative farmers, and they're so skilled at what they do. But one of the most powerful things I've seen is walking in and say Tom is mentoring a student who's just been told off by his teacher for walking across the garden bed because you don't step on the soil, you come back to your soil, get out of the, whatever it is. And Tom was like, what's going on? He's like, and Tom's like, yeah, well, mate, you made a mistake, yeah? Like, you knew that you don't walk on garden beds, but we're human. I make mistakes. We all make mistakes. Like, don't consider it as, you're getting told off. Consider it as a learning tool and just getting on with it. And all of us, you could just see in this student's whole energy just shifted. And he's like, oh, okay. And so the connection that we're seeing between our farm team and even the trainees who are still students, mentoring other students in the school, is absolutely profound. So I guess that's one part, making it actually tangible to their life. A lot of these kids have never grown food before, so if we can actually educate them how to grow food, how to actually use that food and show them how delicious it can be, well, what's the best way to actually connect someone? It's actually giving them a tasty meal and, through their stomachs. So that's by far, the pretty powerful medium what we're working with. The community, we've had volunteer programs, and it's something we do want to get back to. And obviously the Build a Farm in a Day was the ultimate volunteer program, but we actually charged them as well. But it does require a lot of management from the farmers and making sure that it's managed well, I guess. And if it's not the right farmer, it's probably something we can pull for a little bit and then try and get back on track. But for us, I don't think it's about getting volunteers in to get work done. It's more about that community engagement, that education, that sharing of knowledge, and sharing the story as well. Does that answer all your questions? Yeah. Yep.
We've just got time for one more question.
Lucky one over here. Oh, so, okay, yeah.
Just on the Farm My School, there seems to be a pretty heavy focus on vegetables because they're obviously scalable.
Yep.
And I'm just wondering about orchards, fruit, and where that does or doesn't fit into the Farm My School, and also where protein sources might be fitting in if you're trying to generate a balanced food.
Yeah, absolutely.
Food plan.
Yeah, great question. And this comes back to the size available, or the land available to us. We are definitely planting fruit trees at Bellarine. Obviously, it takes a bit longer to grow the fruits from that. So we've got some citrus and avocado trees in, and we're going to be doing an orchard next winter there. For us, I guess also that is really important, and I haven't mentioned this actually, is that we know we can't grow enough produce in that 1.5 acres to feed our boxes for the whole year. And that's not the model. We don't want to be sort of, being the ones, the mighty, champions of this. We actually want to be engaging other regenerative local growers to source food from as well. So if it is the berry farm up the road, or it is the potato farmer in Wurdi-Bullock who are biodynamic and grow beautiful potatoes and onions, or it is Kinsfolk Farm in Moriac, or Common Ground Project in Freshwater Creek, or literally 500 metres away there's another organic farm from us, Bella Green Organics. So if we can be buying from them when our produce, we've got a lull, or our radishes aren't quite ready, or we've just sold out of all of our potatoes because, 5 weeks of potatoes and that's all we can pretty much grow in our farm currently, unless we grew more potatoes, but it doesn't make sense financially. If we can buy produce from them, we're supporting them, so that's brilliant. If we can promote them in our boxes as well, that all of our boxes have a recipe card in them and they have an item list of what comes in them and a map on the back of where produce has come from. So when you're not getting potatoes in our box, but about Casuarina Farm or about Kinsfolk Farm sell their produce at Torquay, that is creating a really resilient local food system. If we can be encouraging pathways for farmers, so therefore we're encouraging more farming in the area, then this is creating food security and it's creating a resilient food system which we need. So yeah, really good point. But yes, we will be doing small amounts of fruit, but we aim to be actually sourcing a lot more fruit from other people. It's probably more as a not tokenistic, but definitely more of an educational tool, and this is what's available for us. So, yeah, great question. I will happy to hang around and chat with anyone for other questions as well. But thank you so much for listening today. And yeah, I think as Mandy said as well, this is the converted, and I'm sure you're doing amazing things. And keep doing what you're doing in your everyday, and keep talking about it and telling people, because that's where real change is going to happen. So yeah, thank you so much. You're welcome.
Thank you, James. And what an incredible rallying call for the power of community and the power of us all to create new systems and to create change locally and within our communities. Endlessly inspired whenever I hear James talk. I'm like, keep going. Before we finish, we've just got a couple of additional bits and pieces to talk you through. We were going to have somebody from Gardens for Wildlife be here this afternoon and talk you through the program, but without them here, I'm going to do a little bit of that. I'm not sure, is anyone aware of Gardens for Wildlife, the program? Yeah, a few, maybe not many. So the program is a volunteer group of residents who help improve urban habitats in urban areas. And those volunteers will go around to people's homes and provide advice and guidance on how to create wildlife-friendly gardens. And so they also offer a free Design Your Own Gardens for Wildlife workshop to help you design your garden. And they have a demonstration pollinator site at South Geelong Station, so you can go check out what that might look like. There's a whole range of reasons why wildlife gardening is a win for you and also for biodiversity in our urban environments. James was talking about nature deficit disorder. There are so many physical and mental health and wellbeing benefits, but let alone for our natural environment as well. And when we create these biodiversity-rich gardens, they start to connect and build, and they create this incredible network that supports us and supports our environment. A recent survey of 4,000 Australians found that people with greater nature connection reported significantly higher life satisfaction and quality of life than those with the lowest levels of nature connection. Pretty huge when you think that it's quite simple to find nature in our towns and our cities. You don't have to go out to the Yuyangs, you don't have to go out to national parks. We've got so many beautiful parks and nature strips and backyards or little spaces that can really benefit you and our environment. So Gardens for Wildlife have developed a vision for us and for nature. So we're just going to share a little film that they've created. I mean, I know where I want to live. There are 3 ways you can get involved with Gardens for Wildlife. If you'd like to have a volunteer come and visit your garden, you can scan the QR code there or visit the website. They'll help you enhance your garden, make it wildlife friendly. You can also visit the City of Greater Geelong website. You can also be trained to become a garden guide. So if you're interested in that, follow these same links. And there is a Design Your Own Gardens for Wildlife workshop on Saturday, the 8th of November. So I highly encourage you to get involved. It's an incredible program doing amazing things. Finally, I just wanted to provide an overview of Geelong Sustainability's Electric Homes program, which is running at the moment, and it ends on the 31st of December. We know that electrifying your home can be completely overwhelming. There's so much information out there. There's a lot of questions around who to trust, how to choose the right product, is this a good price? There's been a period of time in all of our lives, I'm sure, where we've had a lot of free calls saying, hey, I've got a great deal for you. So how do you work out who to trust and how to take action? So we've tried to make it as easy as possible. We've gone through a process to vet trusted local suppliers who've committed to good products with good prices. And so the program is trying to make life as easy and transparent for you as possible. I'm trying to think. Whether you want to do a whole bunch of great things or you just want to start small, we've tried to make it really simple for you to take action to electrify, save money on your energy bills, and to take climate action as well. Feel free to come and chat to myself afterwards if you have any questions. You can also scan the QR code that was there, maybe is there. Also, just want to thank all of our sponsors for helping. This is our last event in our Sustainable House Day series. So big thank you to City of Greater Geelong and Winky Energy and the many others who have helped us pull together a whole series of events and activities to support community action. Thank you again to James and Mandy for being here with us today, and thank you all as well. Have a lovely afternoon.
Can I grab it, everybody? If you could stay for 1 minute, unless you don't want to be in a photo, I'd love to grab James on stage and let's get a bit of a selfie because, you know, we need to celebrate people like you and Sustainability Geelong and the sponsors. This is the start of change and this is the revolution that you talk about. And so a huge thank you. So if you're okay with being in a selfie, I'm going to get James to hold the camera. We'll turn around and on the 3, if we can have a yay, I think we're going to get a decent selfie out of that.
Beauty.
Now, we might have to do, there we go. Can we get it? How are we going? I think we're almost there. Are we ready? 1, 2, 3. Yay! Yay! Thank you, everyone. Who ate the dumplings, by the way? What did you think? Excellent. It's freezing cold now. It's great.